I've already used this joke a couple times, but I can't remember what we're going to talk about tonight.
This is not a show and might not even be a connection. Here's Judah and guest.
Why do you laugh? Why do you encourage that kind of tomfoolery?
Tomfoolery. Silliness.
Here with Joshua Blackburn tonight, and it's beautiful. It was just a beautiful, gorgeous day. I was telling.
It's a beautiful day in the South.
Oh, it is. I was telling my wife, I got this new job working with an old friend. His son and I played basketball together. He's just always been a real encourager of his son and me, and anyways, I started working, doing some social media for him, and told Chanda today, I was like, I don't know if it's just working for Keimer or it's just the beautiful weather, I can't tell if I'm just super excited about this new job, and it's both. But
yeah,
the weather was just, I got to go outside and take pictures and stuff. Oh, it was marvelous. What'd you do today, Joshua?
I went to the office and did administrative tasks, like answer emails and apologize to people for errors that I did not do myself.
Sounds riveting.
Oh, it really is. And occasionally I get to do, something that's a little more riveting, like do a little case consultation with clinicians when something comes up. So
yeah,
I get to be the guy they bounce stuff off of.
Ideas.
A
little more supervision type stuff.
And normally it's kind of, am I going to get in a jam if I do this? So it's, I wish it was more constructive, but more often than not, it's working through some potential ethical dilemma. Or like I had a clinician that she called me. She was like, I just got to talk to you about this case. And, she's got an 11-year-old that she's treating. And, there's a lot of issues going on in the family. And this particular clinician, her heart's in the right place. She wants her client to be safe. And it's like, look, I know you want to just jump in your car right now and go fix the problem, but we're limited. You can advocate for your client. If there's some, clear, abuse issue, then you can call it in and report it. But that's where it stops. You can't,
It's hard. You have to have boundaries and limitations.
You do,
because
it's
there
tough.
are rules.
There are rules, and we have a very limited role.
It's hard though.
Because you're almost like a bystander, and you can feel very powerless.
Yes.
When you're trying to affect, some outcome, but it's hard for folks to stay in their role as my job is just to support this one person.
Yeah.
And advocate and take some action when necessary, but those are always sadly limited.
And it's tough as people helpers. We're wired to want to do as much as possible.
Exactly. Oh, because
we're in the field.
She would ramble on so and so needs to do this, and this needs to happen, and this, and I'm like, yeah, that's for a court, or that's for an agency, or that's for the police. That's not our job. Yeah. As hard as that, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Hey, well, God help her, and I'm glad you're there to sort of lead her and advise her.
Sounding board. That's it. Yeah.
Be a sounding board. Yes, and I'm glad you're here for me to be a sounding board.
Well, yeah,
you're a good sounding board, Josh. All right. So, but speaking of sounding board, we had a lengthy. We have a regular watcher now. He hasn't been able to watch, and so he's been watching it. Watcher, audience member, somebody who comes and checks out the feed every now and then. and a good friend of the family, Jim Pass, and he had some responses. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he had some good points here. And he said, as far as there was a part where Josh talked about the finality of choice. He says there are absolutes. The decision to believe or not to believe in Jesus Christ during the span of our lifetime here on earth has absolute consequence, irrevocable after death. So, this is going back to our discussion about death. And, this was particularly his response. He was writing this while watching our video, while we're talking about fall and, change and death. In this life, words and actions are permanent. You may regret what you say and apologize, but you cannot erase them. Same thing with negative actions.
True.
And we talked a little bit about that. You may make reparations. Oh, this is what you were saying. Yes. And so he was saying, I think that one has to look at life as an absolute. When our soul identity is created by God and awarded to us, the breath of life, it's ours from then on, through this life and after, through all eternity, regardless of where we spend it. Death is simply the transition from this life to the next. Absent from the body, face to face with the Lord. Absolutely, you guys hit the nail right on the head with that one. And so he has a lot of good responses to what we're talking about. Dogs, according to my pastor, who searched the scriptures assiduously.
Assiduously.
Assiduously. That's a good word. There are no references to pets in heaven. Actually, my dad, David McNeil, found one, and that is, I think it is in Psalms. It says, "We will pray together. Something about heaven, and the curs will be on the outside," or something like that. So there's
normally is a poetic image. Dogs are unclean and less than favored creatures in Scripture.
Yeah. But he has a lot of good responses here. I don't want to go through them all, but I just thought that was interesting. The whole idea of the permanent, identity is something that it, by definition, can't change, right?
I guess it would just depend on how you define identity.
Well, if it changes, it's not identity, right?
Well, you've changed identities. I've changed identities. Parts, roles. We've added roles, we've subtracted roles, or jobs or tasks.
But then how are we identified if it changes?
Right?
That's
so is identity static? Is it a dynamic thing?
Is identity dynamic?
Or is it a complex? Is it a little bit of both and?
Well, it is complex, and that's the thing. Oh, we already have somebody in the comment section. Oh, Jim made it today. Hi guys, paid attention to my clock this week. Well, I'm glad you made it. I was just going over your responses. We're talking about identity. Now, here's the thing: is I think that ties well into the idea of memory. I appreciate you bringing that up, Jim, about identity, because what remains constant about our souls? To me, our soul is our identity. To me, the soul is where our spirit meets our body and they combine to make our soul. And I know there are many people that disagree with me. Maybe you disagree with me, Josh. What? I'm gonna have to start calling you Joshua because that's what it says down there. And so but there has to be something constant. I know we talk about change and how we're constantly changing. We are a river of information as humans. And yet there's a remnant. There must be some remnant. Question mark?
Maybe. I don't know. I should ponder on this. Yeah, a river of information. I guess I almost want to say a river of experience
Of experience.
or perceptions. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's so much more than data or thoughts or ideas. I mean, there's what we see, what we feel, what goes on in response to the things outside of our bodies within, like our emotions and our feelings, and so there's all this sensory data going on that's more than just simply thoughts. But identity. I don't know. I guess the struggle I think sometimes I have with identity is that there's so many different ways that we can look at it.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at it from a historical perspective. We can look at it from almost like a very personal worldview perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's language that gets thrown around a lot nowadays. People who identify as right?
Yeah.
Or there's relational identity. I think that's kind of cool. As far as like as you see it in scripture, it's like Simon bar Jonah, Simon son of Jonah.
Yeah.
Like even in
Judah ben Hur is
even in naming, right? Like this relational aspect gets thrown in very quickly. So that there's different angles from which to look at this concept of identity.
Well,
and then memory plays a huge role psychologically in
we
identity.
Can't have identity without memory, right?
It's impossible.
There's no such thing.
Identity is impossible. Language is impossible. But without this thing called memory,
which is strange, and you have some thought out already. You've already thought a lot of this out, and so I just want
to. And the struggle that I have, like when we talk about identity and memory, like the death of identity is absolute loss of our memory.
Yeah,
to some degree. I mean, you see it, I think, tragically in Alzheimer's. And when folks, will reach the last stages of our life and come down with dementia, though I often wonder how much of it is. It's marred, but is it ever entirely erased? I don't know. For some people, it does. But even for myself, like I recognize that my memory is not that great. It's flawed.
Like human memory is abysmal. I mean, I say human. I don't know if pigs have better memory or what have you, but
or elephants, like they say. Elephant never forgets, things like that. Yeah. I forget.
Yeah, and not only do I forget, I think the problem isn't that I forget. The problem is that I distort. My memories are distorted by my intentions, are distorted by my hopes, my feelings, my thoughts. And everybody's are, right? They are not a physical.
And therein lies the struggle in my mind, because like I can be skeptical about my memories, right? I can say, well, maybe it didn't go down like that. Maybe my recalling of that event is not accurate. And once that skepticism, like a lot of arguments start out with, especially like you think about married people. Well, you remember when, and all of a sudden it's like, well, my version of that event is a lot different than your version of that event,
Yeah.
and now we've got conflict. But internally, like, right? So I mean, when a conflict happens, people tend to get entrenched because identity and memory are so linked. They're linked so tightly, right? And any attack on our identity is going to generally be encountered with stiff resistance. But on
Yeah.
the other end of the spectrum, this is where I don't have a resolution to this issue. Like on the one hand, we get very rigid with our belief that our memory is accurate and therefore true, and tied in with our identity. But on the other hand, once you introduce skepticism here, where does it stop? Like where is it kind of like probabilistic? Like, okay, I know some things, and a good majority of those things are true.
Well, if you
But how
remember, do you
much and
remember?
which ones?
Yeah, how much and which ones? I think that's very scary. It gets into a real scary area. Now,
It could.
I think that's why it's so important. One, to believe in the transcendent, to believe in something outside of us
Mm-hmm.
that draws us into truth, because our assertion of truth is that a word? Assertion?
To ascertain the truth.
To ascertain the truth. Our
Yeah.
ability to ascertain the truth is, obviously, we've been talking about it, is flawed. And so believing in somebody that can, in an entity that can, in a transcendent that can, I think without that, life can be, I mean, in my imagination at least, I imagine that to be quite scary. And
That's the way I look at it. Outside of, and I don't like, I'm not a big fan of that term, but people use that
what term?
Transcendent term. I'm more of a relational. So I mean, because I mean, as far as like identity, right? So
Yeah.
And certainly it's exterior and transcendent, and because I mean, like if we're talking about God as transcendent, the moment I use the word transcendent, the next thing I want to start talking about immanence. So we go back and forth, and we're, whatever.
I know what you mean. Like he is outside and above, and yet
like
inside and with.
Yeah. So those words start to fall apart really quick.
Right.
But again,
but what we're talking about particularly here is the transcendent part of it that's outside of us, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's exterior, right? Like it's transcendent in that sense that it's over and above and outside of us. That, yeah, I mean, without having some kind of identity that's fixed. So, like, if I have an identity in Christ, that's fixed.
Yeah,
it's unchanging. If I have an identity in God, then it's a relationship to a fixed point. And absolutely, like I that's been something in my life, ups and downs, whatever's going on. That's not really changed for me. And I watch other people in their lives and wonder, wow, that's really got to be hard not having some fixed point, some North Star, that you can see the relationship.
Well, particularly when it comes to being remembered, because every single person is going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Their memory. So if you don't believe in an afterlife, first of all, if you don't believe in an afterlife, it's how do you even believe in memory?
Well, and I wish I could remember where, if this is like the notion that like when you only truly die when the last person who remembers you forgets, or they too themselves die.
Yeah.
I mean, within, again, this is moving away from the transcendent, but a purely, horizontal, earthly plane.
Well, there's did you ever see called Battlestar Galactica?
Battlestar Galactica. No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a new version and there's a middle version, whatever. Then there was a prequel about the person that created the Cylons. Anyways, if you haven't seen it, you will understand. But this you will understand.
Okay.
They created these beings, they created certain entities, I think they called them avatars, by going into the internet and collecting, like, in the future, so many more people, so much of, I mean, you can imagine, so much of our information is out on the internet now. In the future, there's just records upon records. And so they create these algorithms that pull it all together and create a personality. So kind of what you're saying, to a weird sci-fi logical conclusion, where they take your memories and create an entity out of it.
Okay. So
Of course,
if you were to,
it was hollow, there was a hollowness to it,
right?
but people recognized it, you know. So I thought that was a fascinating philosophical idea.
Yeah. If we just pulled together all this data, would that brought together be a person? Would that be an identity? Would that be a consciousness? And what did they discover in Battlestar Galactica? Did they?
I can't remember.
Okay.
It was canceled because it didn't. But that the Battlestar Galactica prequel. But
the prequel.
I didn't get far enough to really follow it down. But that whole idea has haunted me since, thinking about it. It's like being able to piece a person's personality together through data. Obviously, I say obviously, but according to my belief system, I do not believe that's possible, because I believe in a spark within us that it can't be recreated through the man-made means. However, when we talk about memory, we recreate people all the time, like Mark Twain. We recreate him, and we have a collective consciousness that we ascribe to him, you know, that we all sort of think of him in this way.
Mm-hmm.
He may not have been anything like that. He, you know,
sure. But isn't that kind of how memory works?
Yes. But the thing that struck me recently, talking about reality and stuff, is, and I think my father brought this up when we were talking once, is that most of reality is based on memory. And that blew my mind when I realized every moment passes so fast. In order to have any kind of static consistency through the moments, we need memory.
We do.
So it
fills in the blanks.
Well, it does more than fill in the blanks. Well, okay. So he was talking about
true.
He was talking about it in terms of people that have. Because we were talking about A Beautiful Mind. You've seen that with Russell Crowe?
It's been a little while.
Yeah, me too. But where he sees people, and my dad was talking about how he believed that a lot of that was just false memories, but they were immediate false memories. In other words, you remember somebody was there, but you keep remembering that they were there. And so you see them because you remember them. I mean, how much difference is there between me talking to you right now? I believe you're real, but I mean, if I remember that you're there, you know, just now, and then I, you know, move my head, and I mean, maybe he went off, maybe my computer wasn't on, but I remember he was, you know, it's ghosts and visions and hallucinations thrive mainly on memory.
It certainly has a basis in memory. I mean, I think, you know, like A Beautiful Mind, but we're talking about like psychosis, right? So I mean, you know, and the nature of psychosis is a break with reality, and I guess it's my struggle sometimes, like the difference between perception, what I think I see, and what is.
Yeah.
And ideally, those two are the same. But
Mhm.
probably most of us never really, I think, achieve absolute perception of reality. And then psychosis is just really on another end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, like there really isn't a voice telling me to. I'm really not seeing a little girl right now
Yeah.
who's not there. You know, that's in my visual field. She's there. You know, in my auditory,
But
it's
no, not
registered
in your visual field because there's nobody there. So it's not going through your eyes.
as well. It's not, yeah, but where does even like your perception of me right now? Where does that show up? Does it show up in your eyes or does it show up in your brain?
Memory.
Memory? In right here, right now, is that in your memory?
I mean, now it is.
You can remember it, like you can recall it, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is like the staticness of. I'm not talking about memories,
Yeah, yeah.
but memory being able to hold on to images, being able to hold on to life as it's happening in front of us, as because perceiving it, sure, we've got eyeballs that do that, but obviously these people that I don't know if it's obvious. I'll just say, to me, people that are seeing things that are not there are not seeing them with their eyes.
No.
They're seeing them with their memory.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely some aspect of memory involved in psychosis. And what comes to my mind is there was, I'm not sure if I've seen her around town anymore. There used to be a woman that walked around downtown Bristol, and one of my favorite memories of her was watching her. We were parked at a downtown at the farmer's market, and I watched her get some white bread and a tomato that she purchased. It's just classic Southern moment, like a woman making herself a tomato sandwich, and just seeing the slow, methodical way that she put it together. Well, I ran into her one time, like on State Street, right downtown, and she had asked me for some money, and I didn't have any money, and she proceeded at that point to tell me on no certain terms that I was a less than stellar human being. The difficulty is she was talking to me as if she had known me for years, and started making references to people that she and I both apparently knew.
Yeah.
And okay, let's ride with this. And I'm really sorry
You
about
wrote
that.
it. You wrote
Oh
with it.
yeah. I'm not going to tell this lady you're crazy. You don't know me. I'm like, I don't know. Let's just roll with this because it seems like the most humane and gentle thing to do at the moment. That was really wrong, and we shouldn't have done that. And yeah, we did you wrong, and I'm really sorry. But from my perspective, it's just this lady having a psychotic break. But in her mind, like, who did I remind her of, right? Like what memories, between this intersection of the present moment and things from her past, like what was going on inside of her mind? I have no idea. But no, I hear what you're saying. Like that whole incident was obviously fueled by memories.
Yeah.
She had a very specific person that she had me confused with, and whatever woman that I was somehow, there was some other person involved in how we did it wrong.
She was saying that you and some other
woman. Yeah, it was weird. Like you and so, you all did me wrong. And
it's interesting you bring that up because I just talked to a good friend of ours, Chris, and he was telling us about how a sad story about how his aunt, who he's super close with, is the opposite, where she knew him, and then because of memory deteriorating, started to ascribe all these things to him. They were close. He had been there for her. He was coming over, every week and just hanging out with her. And then all of a sudden, you took my money or something like that. It's like, I know you took my money. He's like, at first, thought it was a joke or something. But it became an ongoing thing and she doesn't, in any other, it's from what I can tell from the story, in any other way, she doesn't seem, she's functional. She's living life. And so how does that happen that our memory gets just, and it's just, it can just be a little thing that gets tweaked and reality gets scary.
And yet we still stay who we are.
Most of us.
And that's going back to like that, is there a static part of our identity that memory is independent? Is it independent of memory?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is my major question tonight, because it bothers me. It bothers me that we're so there. Yeah. There's a lack of staticness because
if I can't remember that I'm me, and I think this is again like this issue between like perception and reality. I perceive myself as myself, but that doesn't change that I am me.
To who?
Well, in reality, and I guess when I say in reality, I mean like apart from my perception, right? Like objectively, historically, like in space and time, and
But see, then it gets into, well, then who are we? Well, I guess we're a culmination, and that's good. We don't want to be one thing from. I definitely don't want to be the same thing I was when I was born. And yet, what is it that makes me different? What is it that makes you different? What
what makes me unique?
What makes me me? Yeah. And if you don't believe in God, how do you answer those questions?
Well, I guess if you don't believe in God, then it probably doesn't matter, which is sort of depressing in itself. But or can't, it very much can be.
But if you don't believe in God, then you must believe that you are multiple people.
I mean, not necessarily. I don't know if I'd go down that path, because I mean, when you say like, if you believe in God, there's this part of me that goes, well, which one? Let's get real specific. Because to ask that question to a Buddhist as compared to a Muslim, as compared to a Hindu, as compared to Johnny come lately, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. Those are going to have very different flavors.
Well, if you don't believe in anything outside of you, then
or if you're just a rank materialist, I mean, like, this is all it is.
Yeah. It's curious to me, then, what is memory to those that are rank materialists?
Well, I think it's the same for everybody. I guess is my struggle as far as like within the boundaries of how memory works and what we're able to record and recall. I think that's the same across the board. I think from my perspective, what I think is more poignant when we talk about memory, and I, when we look at the New Testament, like the places where do this in remembrance of me, as being very key words in the institution of the Lord's Supper. But for me personally, it's the thief on the cross. Of all the things that he could say to Jesus, of all the things he could say, remember me, Lord, in your kingdom.
Smart guy.
Well,
fool, right?
He'd been around, just that particular phrase.
Remember me in your kingdom.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I would have been able to conjure that up.
Like Lord save me, or like
Don't
forgive
let me
me, don't let me
Yeah.
die. You know, bring me to your butt. I mean, there's just, I guess, a host of things that could have been said.
remember me in your kingdom, because that's a real philosophical idea to come up with, right? While you're struggling, suffering,
Yeah,
about to
while you're
die.
dying, a slow, painful
Yeah.
death.
And that may be, I have no idea from experience, at least, that may be when people are the most philosophical, though.
Well, and I don't think of it so much as philosophical as it's like it's deeply personal and relational.
Yeah.
Like, remember me.
Well, and that thought isn't there unless he believes that that's Jesus, that is God, because why would he say that if it's some dude dying next to him, even
Yeah,
if that some dude was a revolutionary? I'm trying to think of Patrick Henry's dying next to me. I don't say, remember me after
remember me.
this. I don't. Maybe I should. I don't know, but because that's a question. Can people remember other people? I mean, obviously Christ can, but will I remember you after I die? Does memory translate past into the next quadrant, into
Sure,
the
why
next
not?
life?
I suppose so. Maybe it's restored. Maybe I don't know. That enters an area of speculation that I fear to tread.
Jim says it, and thanks.
Jim.
You're sticking with us here, man. It demonstrates the conviction by the Holy Spirit in response to his belief in Christ. Yeah, absolutely. If he didn't believe it was Christ, and he couldn't have believed in it, he
No.
couldn't have believed that was Christ without the conviction of the Holy Spirit.
Sure.
What are you looking up right now? What are you looking for?
I'm trying to find that passage because, like, I want to look at the word. It's just I should have done this earlier, but oh well.
No, well, we had no idea we were going to talk about this, but that would be, isn't it in the same area as Jesus wept? So
No, it's actually in the Gospel of Luke.
is it different? Oh, okay. So that was way off.
Yeah, 23 verse 40.
While you're doing that, Jim
42.
says what is it?
42. So 20. The Gospel according to St. Luke,
Okay.
chapter 23, verse 42.
23 verse 42. Hold on. We got a comment here by Jim. When we both get to heaven, we will know and be known.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include memory? It should. That seems like it does.
I think it would almost require memory, right? Like,
I know you. How do you say that without memory?
And I think this is the difficult thing about talking about memory post-death. Like, memory at this point in our life is embodied.
In other words, like the physical aspect of our brain,
like
synapses firing.
There's a huge amount of memory that is stored throughout our entire body. It's not entirely stored in our brains.
Oh, hold on. Whoa. Yes, I totally agree with that. And then what?
Yeah.
Muscle memory and
even I mean, there are I think, as I understand it, verified like medical accounts of organ transplants where the donor has retrieved partial memories from the previous owner of the body part.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
So this notion that we entirely store our memories in our head,
in our brain,
in our brain is probably not the case. It's actually distributed all throughout our body, and it creates.
Well, that makes sense, since actually our brain is not just in our head, right? Our nerves and our extension of our brain.
Yeah. So I mean, the entire brain is it's
Yeah,
it's integral to the rest of the body.
fascinating.
But yeah, it's just
Okay.
when we were talking about memory, it's just the fact
Yeah.
that of all the things
Come
that
back
the
to
thief
that.
says on the cross, it is remember me when you come into your kingdom.
What's going on here?
Put that on the ye old bookshelf.
Wait, I thought you were going to read it.
I did.
through it and you
I wanted to look at the word. I'm sorry. I was just geeking out.
What was the word? What was the word?
It's remember me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, it's one of those moments when I need one of those
Concordance or something.
I need one of those lexical aids to break down the tense of the verb. But anyway, remember me.
Okay. Well, what do you think of this idea of the soul being our memory, and how does that work out with people that lose their memory, like with Alzheimer's and dementia?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to lean back on my ability to say I don't know. Again, because so much of our memories are embodied, and on the other hand, like how much of our memory is so this could get fun. So if our memory is embodied, and yet it's possible that our memories are clarified and restored when our soul is separated from our bodies, does that mean that while our soul is attached to our bodies, there are aspects of our soul that we don't have access to, or don't have immediate capabilities to harness or use? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think that. So I do not believe that a soul is possible outside of experience, and we cannot experience life, at least as far as I know, without a body. I don't know what it looks like to experience life.
I've never experienced it. It's obviously going to happen at some point.
I don't know that, because it said it'll restore our bodies.
That's true, but there's an intermediate state. So there's a point in between separation from the body and resurrection.
I don't know if we experience anything during that time.
That's an interesting question.
See, that's what I was talking about. Remember when I talked about time?
Yeah. So the intermediate state is a really tricky topic, in my opinion, because people have very strong opinions about what they believe the scriptures teach, and a very close examination of the scriptures, in my opinion, leaves you mostly scratching your head. It's very not clear, and I'm okay with that. And so, that's why most people are like, well, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, I don't know.
I have no idea, but I've got some theories.
So, like, I don't know.
I think that there is just nothingness between now and the next thing. And that's what I think because the closest thing I can, at least for me, the closest thing I can think of that's like that is sleep. And that's what they refer to it as,
falling asleep in the Lord, right? And
when you fall asleep, there's nothingness, right?
Is there?
Closest thing we can get to it as humans, other than death or comatose.
But is it is sleep always nothingness?
No. I guess I gotta admit that it isn't.
For many people, it's not. There's that dream state, and the intermediate state. It's tricksy.
It's tricksy
from a theological and biblical perspective.
And it's maybe we're unable to even.
I tend to just to not go there, because I think I guess for me, it approaches useless speculation.
It's my favorite thing to do.
Yes, yes. Like on the one hand, I can say, to be absent with the bodies, to be present with the Lord. I don't know
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Mhm.
The parable of the rich man and Lazarus.
Mhm.
Um,
The rich man who was Lazarus.
well, no, the rich man who,
Oh wait, no, yeah, yeah. The yeah,
Lazarus sits in the bosom of Abraham, whatever that is.
yeah,
And, there's a great gulf fixed between, and the rich man says, oh, if Lazarus would just come over here and give me a drop of water, I'd feel okay.
right.
Or,
So
oh, if
it's
you could just send somebody back to my brothers so they could realize how awful this is.
yeah,
That's probably one of the few places that doesn't sound very parable like, or is it? I mean, again, like that's the trouble with parables. Is Jesus telling,
yeah,
a story, or is he, using, a general understanding of the intermediate state,
yeah.
for the purposes of what he's teaching at that moment? I don't know. Um, but so yeah,
There seems to be something sanctified about memory, right? It's something that
well,
God
see,
talks about a lot.
well, there's God's memory, whatever, which is not like ours. So, and again, I think that's where I'm more of an apathetic fan, anyways. Like
What?
his memory is, so we the most accurate way to describe God is in the negative, what he's not like, as opposed to
Oh
what he is. Like God's memory is not like my memory at
yeah.
all. His is accurate, like it's complete, it's unbiased. Um, my hope, I guess, maybe after death is that I don't partake of my memory, but maybe I participate in his memory.
Hmm.
Whatever my portion of that is.
Well, it reminds me. So when talking about reality and our memories, right?
Okay.
Uh, because our memory has a lot to do with ascertaining reality. Reality being God's memory, I would think. I have a brother-in-law, just a genius brother-in-law, Joseph Brooks, who I think he has one of the best analogies when it comes to truth, and that was that each one of us, so that reality lies out there, truth lies out there, it exists out there, but it's dark, and each one of us has our own flashlight, and the more we get together and shine the flashlight together, the more we see. So in other words, the more we share, the more I see what you see and you see what I see,
Mm-hmm.
the more of truth we see. That we still only see
Apart.
a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount,
Yeah.
but we see more of it together.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And I think that's what's important about memory is shared memory, right?
Mm.
Since our memories are so distorted by our own stuff. Remember, always remember uh, Dr. Donald Williams saying,
Dr. Donald
walking in and
Williams.
say, "Who knows you the best?" And me. And he's like, "No, you're exactly wrong. You're the one who knows you the least." Because, or not knows, or it was who has the best, the best perspective, or something like that. And you have the worst perspective because it's so biased and warped by your own intentions and desires. So with other people, if we're sharing and we're saying, "Hey, is this what you remember?" This is what we get a much better approximation, right?
It, well, it offsets bias, right? having that communal perspective. And yeah, gosh, we could probably go for hours and hours and hours, on this issue of like memory and community and tradition and yeah.
What was that right there? Tell me. You threw tradition in there.
Well, so I mean, like tradition as shared memory, right? So I mean, like when someone passes on to you an experience, a bit of information, a practice, like that's an extension of it's creating a memory, right? Like, and now it's a memory that 2 people hold, or 3 people hold, or 4 people, or 1,000,000 people hold. And there's obviously, I think, some flex. Tradition is it's a dynamic concept. I mean, it's not rigid and static, and there's flex in there over time and space and culture and people and how much we forget, how much we.
When we talk about like, well, it isn't static. Is there anything that's static? Like when we talk about this concept of static, I just thought for a minute,
something unchanging or fixed.
What is there anything in so we'll say natural in our in our natural world that is unchanging? Well, what are we talking about when we say, well, it's not static?
We could get platonic, right? So I mean, like ideas can sometimes be static. Math is static.
Okay, yeah, math, yeah.
Physical laws are static. Matter is ultimately in its broadest conception, matter is static.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things I can think of right off the top of my head. Sorry.
I got it. Okay, yes. And our being able to ascertain those things are not static. So how do we know they're static?
Well, Judah of the skeptical epistemology. If what you said is true, then the one static thing would be that it's all unknowable. So,
yeah, that would be static.
And then we'd be back to, well, I found a static thing in the universe.
Jim Pass, again, thank you for listening. I'm glad you enjoy this. Because I know I do. Think of paradise and purgatory. As conscious holding areas.
Conscious holding areas.
I don't know if I guess the Bible does refer to some kind of purgatory of sorts.
Some folk.
What does what Eastern Orthodox believe about that?
So yeah, this is where the intermediate state. So obviously Roman Catholics believe in purgatory, and they have their own doctrines about purgatory. You can go read about those. The Eastern Orthodox take a much more vague view. So yeah, are there conscious holding states, so to speak, in between death and the resurrection? Well, yes. And is there room for change in those states? The Orthodox would say yes.
Ooh.
There is. But without being like overly rigid and dogmatic about it.
So in other words, we're not going to say no, and that's it.
Basically. Yeah. Well, I mean, and so, part of that is like, is there room to pray for the dead? To ask God to have mercy on those that have died.
And the Eastern Orthodox or the Orthodox stance is
yes,
a non-zero chance.
Yeah, it's yes, go ahead and do that, and it probably has some, and there's the possibility of benefit there. Even I think, yeah,
Huh.
it's not an absolute. It's not considered an absolute fixed state. However, there's not a whole lot of kind of rigid penances and the kind of stuff that develops in the West. It's kind of like, yeah, we kind of see some of that in the scriptures, and that's been kind of borne out by tradition, and but the general focus is on what goes on in this life, and the preparation of the soul, because that's like when we depart, that's what you got. But and I guess the hard thing there is that's all set within a broader developmental scheme of salvation.
Well, aren't there really clear scriptures about this life being what dictates our fate?
Well, sure, it does, and what also dictates our fate is the mercy of God.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So you gotta have like sprinkle. Our old teacher used to say,
you will be judged for the deeds done in the body, and lean on the mercy and grace of God.
Yeah. You gotta have that in your theology somewhere.
Yeah. It's there. It's there. You got to deal with it. I think the trouble becomes when we start using the but, right? Like, you'll be judged in the deeds of the body, but, or vice versa. Like, well, you've been forgiven, so it just doesn't matter.
Well, it's an interesting topic. I don't know. It might be a little too. I find it fascinating, but it may be a little too philosophical for some. Leave a comment. Thank you, Jim, for leaving some comments.
Thank you, Jim.
Who's watching? Feel free to leave a comment, even if you're watching it later. We'll come back to this, and I saw that you came back too. So I do want to talk a little bit about Scott. Scott is usually a regular. He's usually a regular watcher. He had a tragedy in his life recently, and he reached out to us, and I just want to remember him and. To God be with him and give him peace, because this is a tough time for him, and kind of goes with what we were talking about last time. And I don't know, man. It just seems like, I guess, the idea of memory and what remains for us, it becomes really important as I get older, obviously. And when we're talking about death, memory is a huge component of that. As you said, do we still live on? Or what is it? We live until the last person remembers us.
Yeah. Or is that when we truly die? I tend to think we actually die when we die, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
I mean, it really depends on what you mean about die.
And how people live on.
It really means. I mean, it really comes down to what you think life is, right?
It is. It's about life, and of course, this could be another fun topic sometime. Because it's something that's sort of been a bit of a motif, I think, in some of our conversations, considering where you're recording, you're broadcasting this from, and that's legacy.
Yeah.
This idea of legacy, right? I mean, like you're partaking in your grandfather's legacy, chillaxing in the basement.
Yeah. Well, attic, but yeah.
Oh, is it the attic? Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking, well, you're like, are you right on the water, or?
Yeah. There's no basement.
No basements there. My bad. See, memory and bias. So, I live in Tennessee. We got basements. I was thinking that's probably a basement. Oh, it's an attic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, let's take a look here. Yeah. It's it goes on this, that's the roof right there. See?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw this, the backside. I was like, it's kind of got
It's
like
jumbled.
to me, it's got kind of like a basement feel to it.
It
But no,
certainly
it's an attic.
it's an attic. And we have a last person. Jim Long. Thanks
Hello,
for
Jim.
tuning in. Hey Jim, another good friend of the family.
Liberal Protestants very comfortable with that notion.
Liberal Protestants comfortable with the last person notion? What does he mean? What do you mean? Oh, he goes on to say memory not just in the brain, ancestral memories. My 14th century
There's a fun topic.
progenitors were
Watercourse engineers.
watercourse
So,
engineers.
How much memory is encoded in our DNA is something that I don't think we'll unpack for a long time scientifically. But the notion of ancestral memories, or even cross-generational trauma and its effects on the body. I mean, that's actually been studied by the children of Holocaust survivors.
Interesting. He said, when I asked the question, he's talking
The last person silliness.
Silliness. Well, it's silly, but it's also it to me, Jim. It speaks to maybe the silliness, but realness of how sometimes we live hoping that people remember and see us, right? Like see us and remember what we do. Our kids, our parents, well, I guess our parents now, but our kids, other people, that something we do will last beyond us. I think a lot of us, I don't know if a lot of us, I live a lot of my life that way. I often think, well, what can I leave behind? And part of what I'm doing here, talking to you instead of talking, just on the phone or something. And part of it, and part of my whole desire to engage with video and stuff is to leave something for my kids, leave something for other people that when I'm gone, I will live on. Not hoping that I will live on.
Yeah, you don't live on. Or a part of you remains, maybe.
That, well, I wonder if it's like it's the laziness of trying to cheat, so that it's almost as if like, well, he didn't do much in his life, but at least we can kind of see some interesting stuff about what he did live. He really didn't. He wasn't very successsul in life.
But he left a lot of videos.
Hey, this is kind of interesting. Oh wow, Jim has left some more comments. Let's see.
Jim's on it.
I have dreams consisting of elaborate post and beam structures. Posts.
Yeah, like
and
beam construction
structures. Yeah. Same as really, that's fascinating. Without ever, let's see, they built aqueducts, etc., from elaborate wood structures.
Wow. Dutch.
I say silly because that is
the only notion of eternity available to materials. Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yes, yeah. I think that is the silly part of it. For some people, that's all they have. Because we talked about earlier, Jim, is in the sense that like if you don't believe in God or have any notion of God, what does memory matter? How does that matter? And how does personality and the staticness of personality? What is static? We talked a little bit about that. I can't believe that you have memories. So memories of things you've never encountered, Jim. Do you ever have anything like that? Memories or dreams of things you've never encountered.
Um, I will confess to having enough of a lifetime of deja vu experiences, but other than that,
Deja vu.
yeah.
So that's a good question. How does deja vu play into memory?
And I think it may be memory. Yeah, I mean, like, like even that notion, like to see something that you think you have been there before, is that really just perception? Like this relationship between memory and perception, and your brain filling in the gaps really quick, and it almost being a heuristic that just because it seems familiar, or you perceive it as familiar, you actually believe it is, or have the sense that you've seen this before.
Right. Or is it a leftover? Is it so? The one thing we haven't talked too much about is spiritual memory. How much of our memory is through spirit? We've talked a lot about it being through. So
Sure.
Jim, for materialists, materialist, nothing means anything.
Memories are electrons.
Yeah. But to us, my belief is that our personality, our personhood, is where spirit meets body. The mixture of those things together make who we are. I believe that memory is in large part spirit, and that I wonder if dementia and Alzheimer's is not necessarily a lack of memory, but a hindrance of it. Like, I can't see because there's fingers in front of my eyes. Those fingers are physical. You know what I mean?
Or you're hindered from accessing it because of the deterioration of your body. Yeah, that's an option.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have no idea. Walker Percy,
Ooh.
the moviegoer. You know who Walker Percy is? I've heard of him.
Yes, it's a rather influential and famous Southern writer.
Yeah,
and a Roman Catholic.
Appreciation for the significance of place.
Ooh, so that's got me interested, Jim, because I'm a big Wendell Berry fan, and if there's a living person that I think for me pushes this appreciation and significance of place, Wendell Berry kind of is, for me at least this point in my reading, is the poster child for that. But I'll definitely be picking up some Walker Percy.
Well, how does Wendell Berry? I've read a little bit of him, and work. I could see how work and home, and in that sense, place, the belonging.
Well, for him, it's about the love and care and intimacy that comes with belonging in a place, and its relationship with identity, and its relationship with health, and its relationship with community, and how those are all integrated. So he's spent probably the last, I don't know, he's been living in the same farm in Kentucky for the last 40 years. And no, I just finished a book. And I'm going to forget the title. I'm going to butcher the title. I'll butcher the title. But in some of the last chapters, he talks about having lived in one place, for like 30, 40 years, and how, and this is dealing with memory, how even there's this, not only is this there's a familiarity, but there's always a newness. In the moment, like there's this, if you pay attention, there's more there. So I have a feeling I'll be having to pick up some Walker Percy.
Walker Percy
on Jim's recommendation.
Well, Jim goes on to say, spiritual memory.
Eschew Gnosticism. I like that.
Body, soul, spirit help understand and explain, but we are
Yep.
psychosomatic wholes. Body, soul, spirit. No such thing as a spiritual memory. Interesting. I don't know if I
That's why I
agree.
said that was an option. I have a feeling that Jim and I were going to be, we'll be closer on the same page with this notion. Yeah, the reality that we're psychosomatic wholes. So I mean, and that's my struggle. Like if because so much of our memories are embodied, right? Like post death. That's why I wonder. You know, like my memories are so skewed and incomplete. Um, but if you hold to a notion or a concept that you know our calling is to participate in the life of God, then you know from the perspective of memory, you know later on in the future when we're glorified or more perfected, you know what will our memories be like then as the participation that we experience in God increases?
Well, and we will be.
It will obviously be clearer. It'll be more lucid. It'll be more accurate. It'll be less biased.
Yeah.
Ponder that. Yep.
Yeah.
Known and be known.
That's the comment
Jim
he left.
dropping the wisdom. Boom.
Yeah. We got the two Jims just dropping wisdom left and right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. We got to wrap things up, but I want to hit a little bit more here. Jim Lung says the apparent does not exhaust the real.
Nope. Never does.
Unfortunately, haven't read much Barry. Place Bethel, Jerusalem. I know lots of folk who were profoundly impacted by a visit to the Holy Land. Oh. Many were mainly profoundly
clueless.
Interesting. Well, Jim, thank you for tuning in tonight and joining us in discussion. Joshua, I just love being able to talk to you about these things and bouncing ideas off you. Like you said, you're a good person to bounce
I'm
ideas.
a sounding board. Hello, my name
That's
is Sounding Board.
You're more than one thing, Joshua, but one of those things
is a sounding board.
Speaking of which, tell me a little bit about who you have on your. I see a name.
Oh no, it's so.
D. Collins.
This is some hardcore Native American. I was going to say propaganda, but that's not accurate. Yeah, this is slogan. This is slogan war.
Okay.
So yeah, this is an image of a Mohawk man, and his message to everyone is decolonize.
What was his way of decolonizing?
Well, the Mohawks, they did a little colonizing.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know them personally. Huh?
The Senecas did.
Senecas?
The Senecas and Tuscaroras, yeah.
Oh, interesting. That might be a good discussion. Native Americans and early settlers.
Sure. Yeah. How we live on land that we stole.
Yeah.
And what that means.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more about that. What was the thing you said before that we could talk about? And then we could
legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah. This idea of legacy.
I think legacy, but at some point I'd like to talk about Native Americans. Jim getting political on us and said Amy Coney Barrett, colonialist because she adopted two Haitians. I know people are saying that. Yeah.
I don't know who that is. This shows you how out of touch I am. I love being out of touch.
Oh man, that's our so you saw that RGB or whatever her name is, the old lady who was our
Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, yes.
Okay. Recently deceased.
our BG, yeah, recently deceased
Supreme Court
Supreme Court
judge,
sorry,
justice. Yes.
Justice, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it's her replacement.
Oh. Oh, is she a colonizer because she adopted 2 Haitian children?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Apparently, well, caught me off guard, but yeah, all right. So I obviously not, but she's coming under a lot of fire now, as you could, less than you'd think, though. Well, we'll say less than the last guy.
Less than expected. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us, Jims.
Thank you, James.
And Jim Lung. We love you and appreciate it. Everybody who tuned in, thank you. And let's think more about memory. I don't remember what we talked about. Good night and see you next week.
Very well.